He's showing his maturity over
Wow. There's her succubus. I want to show her that. There's her succubus.
Everyone
well, that's right.
We had a press conference. That was the press conference. We got plenty. We got plenty to YouTube. And I mean, the things that you all were talking about, you know, why stage it, right? You know, why stage? It's nothing like interaction.
Real stuff.
You know?
Excuse me, everyone.
Okay.
It's the interview with LA Banks, so if you'd like to get some refreshments or something to drink, and then have a seat, we'll be started in just a few moments. I'd like to introduce to some and just read again to others our author for this evening. So I say to you, good evening to Art Here, Art Now. This is partially a production of the Chicago October Artists Month. My name is Brenda Sawyer. I am president of the Blackstone Library, which you do not see here, but it is always possible to take a concept and move it further than a physical building. Our organization is a local community group that supports Blackstone Library, which is a branch library of the Chicago Public Library System. Blackstone is actually the very first branch library ever built in the system. It was built back in 1904, and our organization actually helped to celebrate the 100th anniversary back in 2004. So we're very proud of the heritage of Blackstone Library. I'm going to answer that call. We're very proud of the heritage of Blackstone Library, but we also believe, and most of our work is done to support that particular branch, but what we also believe is that literature is art, and it is just as much art as the visual arts, which people understand, and music and theater. All of those kinds of things, in many ways, actually start from the words that someone wrote or spoke or thought of. And so we like to support literature as art in as many places as we can, and tonight is just a wonderful opportunity for us to interact with this author. We'd also like to thank ONLI and the Black Age Studios for inviting us in tonight. I hope after the presentation, as you mix and mingle, you'll also look at some of this wonderful art that's here, because this is truly some amazing, amazing work. Tonight I'd like to welcome our author tonight. L.A. Banks is an author of the Vampire Huntress series and also many other genres that she has written in, and I'll let her tell you more about her interests. But she has done awesome work in terms of illustrating and talking about and telling stories about the characters in graphic novel form and in many other genres. So for some, I'll introduce, and for others, I'll just ask you to help me welcome again, L.A. Banks.
Good evening, everybody. This has been a very warm welcome to Chicago for me, and I'm just thrilled to be here. We had fun today with everybody, and you know, just signing together, and it's always a community thing. When you get a bunch of artists together, you know, stuff happens. People start creating projects, start popping out, you know, and that kind of thing. But it is just a phenomenal opportunity. And I wanted to talk a little bit about my work with paranormal literature, or paranormal genre of fiction. And I didn't start off that way. I started off doing relationship books because that was what was acceptable and the only way kind of into the writing market at the time when I came in the middle of the 90s. I had paranormal in my work, in my first book actually, but there was nowhere to shelf it. So since it had a hot relationship, they put it in romance, and I got known as a romance author. But what they overlooked was that I had a 500-year-old curse and people that were dreaming the same dream and all this other stuff. And so finally I got an opportunity to write the Vampire Huntress Legends. Now, I want to say a little bit about this because what I think is very important about creating these wonderful images and the people, the artists that are here that have created phenomenal work, because I do stick figures, and when I see people do stuff like this, I'm just like, wow. Is we're creating images that have a cultural reference. And I think it's really important to put that out there because when I was growing up, I did not see us in superhero or superhero heroine roles. We were always a person that died the first 30 seconds of the movie. I'm just saying. I remember being traumatized. My cousins and I, we all went to these, neighborhood theaters, and you could see 4 or 5 movies for a very little bit of money and hang out all day at the movies. And Night of the Living Dead came out. And there was buzz that this brother makes it all the way to the end of the movie. And at the last 30 seconds, when they shot him in the head, the theater went silent. All these young black kids were like, no. Like I mean, the horror of the movie was like we were rocking and rolling and cheering for him. And then it was like, for real? Oh, we walked home with our tail between our legs, and it was that day, I will never forget, that I swore if I ever got a chance to do anything, that my heroes were going to, beat the monster, jump over the dumpster, fly. My people were going to handle it. Then, as movies progressed, because this was sort of like the frame of reference that was feeding my sci-fi, cult in my head. I never saw any cultural references to any of the demon movies, like The Omen or whatever. And I'm like, if that was my grandmother's house, that girl's head would have been spinning around because she slapped her. There was things like this that I just couldn't, I couldn't sync up in my psyche. And I'm thinking now, if you're running down the alley and you fall, okay, most of us are going to call out some kind of spiritual something before we go down, if indeed we don't have a weapon or whatever. I just saw no spirituality in these stories. And I thought, well, wait a minute. It's vampires and werewolves. Why ain't nobody put a salt line down? Ain't nobody put the anointing on the doors and the windows? True. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not understanding. Ain't nobody saying the 23rd Psalm when they walk. What is wrong with you? And this is a conversation that my friends and I would have talking back to the screen. And we would always talk about how people were stupid because they didn't do this, that, or the other. Well, that's in there. Because as I'm writing these, what was supposed to be one book, which turned out to 18 and 12 vampires and 6 werewolf books, I was, having a lot of fun. Because as I'm sitting there, I could put the things in there that referred to us. I could put, I could have, Sister Marlene, come with her Yoruba perspective and pour libations before, they opened up on the stage. And that the libations she poured were actually ways to keep the demons off of people in the audience when they went home that night. I could have somebody saying the 23rd Psalm to back something up, and somebody had, a little something to put in a white bath to make sure that, nothing bothered you, or you didn't carry home an STD, a sexually transmitted demon. I got crazy mess in my books, okay? And I'll just be laughing out loud because, see, nobody was watching me when I was doing this. They let me do a lot of crazy stuff in the name of science fiction. So I found that there was a freedom place. See, if I was doing it as regular fiction, I was running up against a lot of brick walls in terms of things I could or could not do. But in the name of paranormal, it's a spell, Leslie? Yeah, it's a spell. Go ahead. It would pass right on through. So that also allowed me to have what I call an ensemble cast of strong black men. All right, they didn't all have to be bad guys. They didn't all have to be thugs, you know, in order to sell the books. I could make them gangster, but I could make them gangster on the good side. I could have them, you know, fighting demons and having, you know, these very articulate brothers that, you know, had their dreadlocks and their tall, you know, chocolate selves or their tall, bald selves. And I could just do all these different flavors of black men. I was just like, oh, I like that kind and that kind. You know, I could put them in there, you know, and put them in there in a good way. I could have women who took charge of their own femininity and their own sexuality and their own power, who didn't fall and cry when the demon came. Girlfriend, you know, gets up and pulls a razor out her boot. She got something for it, you know? So I'm like, I want to show that, you know, and yet these characters that I've been able to create are not characters that, you know, are coming from, you know, I'm not supposed to say this, but they're not the kind of Buffy-esque characters where they're in school and they have, you know, like this money from somewhere. Bless you. And we don't know where the money comes from. I mean, they're like people that were castaway people from the neighborhood. You know, one person has been to prison and for a wrongful charge, you know. Another person's an alcoholic that recovered and whatever and came from the trailer parks of Kentucky. You know, I go around and pick people who are throwaway people from every ethnic group, every religion, and, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it makes it for a more colorful world. It's like the way I grew up in the city. Like if you're from Chicago, you're from a big city, you know, it's not just one kind of people. It's a diaspora of people. It's multicultural and multi-ethnic, and so I mix people up. You know, I have a kid from the barrio, and who's maybe his grandma has, you know, Saint whoever on and the praying hand.